Operation Varsity Blues culminated early this morning when approximately 300 special agents from the FBI and the IRS criminal investigations set out to arrest 46 individuals across the country for their roles in an international college admissions bribery and money laundering scam.
You might remember there are some high-profile names involved with this. Let's watch.
This morning, two of Hollywood's brightest stars are now facing major jail time in a college admissions cheating scandal that's rocked the country. Both women, Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin, are accused of conspiracy to commit mail and wire fraud, all to help their daughters gain access into elite colleges.
So we have some updates on this story. Huffman would eventually serve 14 days in federal prison, while Loughlin served 2 months. Fast forward to now. The mastermind behind it was sentenced yesterday to 3.5 years. Reporting from AP. The punishment for Rick Singer, 62, is the longest sentence handed down in the sprawling scandal that embarrassed some of the nation's most prestigious universities and put a spotlight on the secretive admissions system already seen as rigged in favor of the rich. Certainly is not rigorous for the rich. So prosecutors had sought 6 years behind bars, noting Singer's extensive cooperation that helped authorities unravel the entire scheme. Singer began secretly working with investigators in 2018 and recorded hundreds of phone calls and meetings that helped authorities build the case against dozens of parents, athletic coaches, and others arrested in March 2019. So how did this all come to light? As Senator Nina Turner would say, I am glad you asked. Authorities in Boston began investigating this scheme after an executive under scrutiny for an unrelated securities fraud scheme told investigators that a Yale soccer coach had offered to help his daughter get into the school in exchange for cash. The Yale coach led authorities to Singer, whose cooperation unraveled the entire scheme. Coaches in sports such as soccer, sailing, and tennis took bribes to pretend to recruit students as athletes, regardless of their ability. Fake sports profiles were created to make students look like stars in sports they sometimes did not even play. The bribes were typically funneled through Singer's sham charity, allowing some parents to disguise the payments as charitable donations and deduct the payments from their federal income taxes. Singer took more than $25 million from his clients, paid bribes totaling more than $7 million, and used more than $15 million of his clients' money for his own benefit, according to prosecutors. So beyond the bribes, there is a more vile factor to all of this. One of the most disturbing parts in Operation Varsity Blues is the revelation that some white students posed as black students on their applications to take advantage of affirmative action. Further, Singer's fictitious foundation that accepted bribery payments was ostensibly created to support black and brown students in undeserved communities to have more college opportunities. Again, 15 days, 2 months, and 3.5 years for the people who did this. And think about the students who could have gone to these schools, who are actually deserving of it, who actually worked hard, who actually were from underserved communities that are typically discriminated against, that laws were created so that there was some leveling of the playing field. No, none of that. Jackson, what are your thoughts?
Well, these stories can be easy to overlook, but also just when it comes to law, it can be easy to paint these stories. It's not that big of a deal because nobody got physically hurt necessarily. But you pointed out, and that's stretching on, that this type of crime has broader effects on more people. Because when you go about this type of fraud, this type of theft, you're delegitimizing institutions that people need to be able to trust in. You're not only delegitimizing yourself, but you're robbing opportunities away from people, like you pointed out, students who worked hard, who deserve those positions. And often, whether it's something like this, or it's maybe a bank ripped somebody off, or, people in the crypto space, you can thrust people into being deeper into poverty maybe than they already were, which causes people to have to make decisions that can impact their lives, like selling illegal products or robbing this and that because they're desperate, because they got ripped off or because an opportunity got taken away from them. So it really is that big of a deal. So, unfortunately, they're getting a slap on the wrist. But I think that one of the benefits we have in modern times is with social media and just the internet, we can educate people on why these types of crimes are so destructive to society.
Yeah, that's so well said. I think it's interesting as well. I can't help but think about the people who were afforded every single privilege. Say, they went to the best private schools. Their parents paid for them to get into the best private schools. So then they had the best SAT scores and they had the best GPAs so they could get into the best colleges because maybe they had tutors and they had the ability to do extracurricular activities instead of be working for all of the hours that they were home from school to help feed the family or take care of younger siblings. There are so many legal ways that the wealthy have a leg up for getting their kids into the best possible schools. That's a problem as well, that inequity. And then, despite all of those advantages afforded to you, you still have to bribe a soccer coach or a tennis coach or a sailing coach for a sport your kid doesn't even play to get them into the best schools. Like, I think that's just adding insult into injury. I went to, Brown University, which is an Ivy League school, and there's such a divide between the kids who worked really hard to get there and came from low-income families, and then the kids who are afforded every possible advantage to get to that point. And there's a tension between those two groups. But then when this admissions scandal hit, there was a total change in the culture of now rich kids had to say, I actually did have good SAT scores, or I actually did get admitted. My parents didn't give them any money. And so it just really is interesting how dynamics are changing and the meritocracy illusion is falling apart in the United States. But this is nothing new. So reporting from the New York Times, consider Harvard. A 2019 paper from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that over 43% of white admits are ALDC, athletes, legacies, dean's interest, and children of faculty and staff, compared to less than 16% of admits for each of the other three major racial or ethnic groups, and that around 3/4 of them would not have been admitted otherwise. As the Times reported in 2018, a federal lawsuit revealed emails between Harvard's Dean of Admissions and university fundraisers suggested special consideration for the offspring of big donors, those who have already committed to building or have an art collection, which could conceivably come our way. Just disgusting. Jackson, any last thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just finishing off with it, like you said, it really is disgusting to take these types of opportunities away from people because, even if it's not an Ivy League school, having that's legitimacy, that's credibility. And, I'm 30 years old and it wasn't until relatively recently that my name meant anything because I ain't got nothing behind my name for real, other than things I started and things I did. So it took a long time for that to mean something. And in that time, I very well could have gotten thrown in prison for selling drugs and stealing stuff because I was broke and all the jobs I had access to were terrible. So, that's the reality of this. And especially if you're taking this away from people who are like 18, 19, it's wrong. So the picture needs to be painted differently.